Hello and welcome to this brand new program where we celebrate the people and organisations who are doing amazing things across Australia to help make the world a better place. Each week on this program, we'll take a first-hand look at the work of Aussies who go out of their way to make a positive difference in their community. We'll assemble a panel of social and community leaders to discuss various topics that relate to our everyday lives, and we'll invite you to join the conversation at helpinghands.tv. The Darlinghurst Theatre Company operate the Eternity Playhouse Theatre, and along with Create New South Wales and the Royal Australian Historical Society, they have helped to support a documentary which provides a look into who we are as a nation.
This is the red carpet screening of Written in Chalk, The Echo of Arthur Stace, which is a documentary we've been working on for a number of years now. Today we're expecting about 200 people to come along. It's at the Eternity Playhouse Theatre, which was the Burton Street Baptist Tabernacle, which is where Arthur Stace heard the Echoes of Eternity message.
Arthur Stace, or Mr. Eternity as he was known in the media, was so taken by the Echoes of Eternity message that he went on to write the word eternity on Sydney streets and pavements for 35 years, more than 500,000 times between 1932 and 1967.
So, Written in Chalk, The Echo of Arthur Stace. You want to win a pass? We've got 3 double passes now to Monday night special preview. And Virginia Munro, who's on the phone. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you know about Arthur?
Well, Arthur was very famous for writing the words eternity in that beautiful script that he wrote. And he's been celebrated by artists such as Martin Shaw. And also in the 90s in Darlinghurst, there was a shop called Remo, and they used to print the eternity sign on T-shirts and bags. So, yeah, and they still do now. It's a lovely celebration of his life and his contribution to the history of Sydney.
Yeah.
And it's good to keep it alive.
The energy and the buzz in the room is amazing. You look around and you see people having a chat, and I look at all these people and I know that they have something in common. And it's not what they do, it's not how they do it, it's the fact that they're somehow connected to Arthur Stace and the Eternity story. And that's the common thread that's bringing everybody together here. There isn't one person in this room today that's not connected or touched by Arthur Stace and the Eternity story in some way. Some people are proponents for the story, they've reinterpreted Arthur's work and are representing it, and some people are trying to carry on the legacy that Arthur Stace started.
Well, Eternity has been in the Remo design range since 1990, and it's one of those perennials that resonates with people. Whenever we bring anything back into our range, Eternity is always at the front of the queue.
Tonight's about thanking everybody for being involved, the crew and all of the financial supporters who put money into this film to make it happen. So we literally couldn't have done it without those financial supporters.
What we did was just help support it financially and also just encourage the creation of the film, gave some ideas. But generally just sit behind it and give encouragement through financial support.
My involvement with the word eternity is that I bought a painting. The painting was of the rocks, but it had the word eternity written across it. And it really took me back to my childhood of when we used to come to Sydney and see the word eternity written on the pavement.
I would look to see if I could ever see an eternity. And every time I did, and it would have been a few times, I loved it.
Sometimes there was a bit of a shadow of the one from the day before, but it was almost rubbed out by the soles of people's feet as they went past.
Once we would see one, we'd be going looking for the next one. It was a game or a competition to see who would spot it.
I'm a graffiti artist, so it's all about words. And so, Arthur Stace was like the forerunner of all of us.
If you're thinking a timeline of graffiti art tag, so to speak, whatever you want to call it. Arthur's 1932, passes away in 1967. Cornbread starts in 1967, and in the late 60s it starts in New York, and it becomes this big epidemic. MCing, rapping, and then after that, then you get your street art, and then that goes around the world in sort of like the early 80s, and then graffiti was just like part and parcel. If you did one, you did all of them, and it becomes like this broader thing.
I have an eternity tattoo on my shoulder. I have another friend with an eternity tattoo. We're like fanboys.
It's so important for us to be documenting historical Sydney stories, and this one in particular, it's iconic to Sydney specifically, and iconic to the very space in which we're standing here tonight at Darlinghurst Theatre Company's Eternity Playhouse, which was one of the most seminal parts of the story that we'll be seeing in the film tonight. So I think it's really, really important that people take note. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and historical Sydney stories deserve to be told.
Coming up after the break.
My name is Richard Attia. I'm the executive producer and director of Written in Chalk, The Echo of Arthur Stace. What this is?
The old pulpit.
This is the pulpit your father used
Yes,
to
I
preach
know. Isn't that wonderful?
It's such a privilege to have Ruth Ridley with us today. She's the daughter of Reverend John Ridley, who talked about wanting to echo eternity across all of Sydney, standing on this stage in front of this pulpit.
Oh, open your ears, men, open your ears. It's a poor human being who is saying from the casket in his cold clay, you've got to meet it, you've got to meet it. You can't sidestep it, eternity, eternity.
My name is Richard Attia. I'm the executive producer and director of Written in Chalk, The Echo of Arthur Stace, which is a wonderful project which I've had the absolute privilege of working on for the past, I think it's been 3.5 years. It's been a long time. The Lord Mayor couldn't be with us today, but she did send in a video greeting, so we might play that now.
I'm sorry I can't join you in person for this film, which tells one of the great Sydney stories in the place where that story began. Council purchased what had been the Burton Street Tabernacle in 2003, and after an extensive program of works, we transformed it into the Eternity Playhouse, named for Arthur Stace, and it's a fitting name for the theatre where the Darlinghurst Theatre Company continues to tell stories that inspire us. 2022 marks 90 years of the Eternity story, and I welcome Written in Chalk as the next chapter and thank all the storytellers who reflect our lives and history.
Happy New Year, Australia. Welcome to the 21st century. Health and prosperity to you all. The magnificent scenes here in Sydney, the Harbour Bridge Eternity, Arthur Stace, for 50 odd years here in Sydney, writing that on the sidewalks and the footpaths all over Sydney. In fact, still in one of the bells of the GPO, and there it is tonight on this magnificent night, the Millennium Night, Eternity over Sydney Harbour.
Gosh, in 3 months, it had become an iconic moment.
The Millennium celebrations introduced a whole new generation to the Eternity story. It was the Olympics that sealed it.
It was absolutely fantastic. I just loved all the incredible insights from so many different people, walks of life, professions, who had all experienced something really profound about Stace's word, eternity.
It shows you history of Sydney, but also shows you the power of one word and how influential that can be through the generations.
I wanted tonight to be a thank you to all of our supporters and also to be a place where people could connect. It's all about the arts, connecting and just helping to create stories that shape who we are and the way we see ourselves. I wanted today to be a thank you to people. I think it was that, and then a whole bunch more.
I've got a picture in there. I've got an artwork that I did. It just touches so many people from different parts of life. The message of resilience, of changing the world one step, one person or one word at a time is very hope-inspiring.
His word eternity was shared with the world at the Olympics. It was shared at the world with the year 2000. It echoes through environmental causes, religious and personal. It has personal meanings for people. Just didn't realise how many people he'd touched. I was surprised that graffiti artists now were taking up his message and communicating it now. And it had meaning for the people of today, and that was very, very special.
Australians telling Australian stories is vital to our very fabric of who we are. We need to invest in Australian stories, and they need to be told authentically. They need to centre people with lived experience and honour those who've come before us so that we can learn about where we need to go.
If you are a helping hand or would like to see a helping hand from your local community featured on this program, visit our website and be in touch. We'd love to hear about the people and organisations across Australia who are making the world a better place.
To find out more about some of the stories the Darlinghurst Theatre Company hosts at the Eternity Playhouse Theatre, visit our website, helpinghands.tv. Welcome back to Helping Hands. We are spending a little bit of time today looking at the stories we tell and how they shape our national and cultural identity. Joining Laura Bennett for our panel discussion in the studio today is social researcher Mark McCrindle, psychologist Colette Smart, and sports chaplain Raewyn Elsgood to discuss the dynamic of culture and identity.
Thanks for being with us. On the panel today, we have Colette Smart, psychologist and teacher. We also have social researcher Mark McCrindle and the coordinator of sports chaplaincy in New South Wales, Raewyn Elsgood. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Mark, is there such a thing as Australian culture? What does that mean?
There is. We're a very diverse nation, but we know that there is a culture different to other countries we look at, because whenever people bring in Americanisations in words, and we say, hang on, that's, we don't want to call our footpaths sidewalks, or I know when I hear my kids talk about soft drinks as sodas, we say, no, we're Australian. And we look across to England and there's some commonalities, but we see their social classes, and we're a far more egalitarian culture here. We love to find our differences from New Zealand. We like to compete against them. So we know that we're different to even some comparable nations. Probably that culture has emerged over many years. We're a migrant majority nation, so that shaped a lot of our culture. More than half of our population now either themselves were born overseas or have at least one parent born overseas. And so we're a culture that's a mix of so many nations. Plus, of course, our First Nations people that shape so much of the modern Australian culture. So it's hard to define what the Australian culture is. We know what it's not. We know we don't want to be like the other nations. And we know that we do have a lot of warm things about our relaxed culture, that we're fairly easygoing, that we don't take ourselves too seriously, that we like to make a contribution and help others, and that we pretty much back ourselves as we give it a go on the global stage. So all of those characteristics come together to create a little bit of a unique culture in this part of the world down under.
Yep, that we have a whole lot of pride in. I think there's absolutely Aussie pride. But Colette, when you think about what our understanding of Australian identity might be, how does that impact the way we each live individually, day to day, that connection to this idea of Australianism?
Well, as I open my mouth, you can hear I'm just not the Australian in the room. I'm a citizen, and we've lived here for almost 20 years. I'd lived in the UK for a while before I came here, and you know, all three nations speak English, yet I couldn't find certain things on the shop shelves that I was used to finding before. I often say to parents, and I think I can because I wasn't born here, I often say to parents, it's so important for your children to have connection to their culture and their community. There's certain South Africanisms that are still very much part of our home, but there's other things that are so important for your child being Aussie because they've grown up here and they are Aussie. So certain things in your culture are anchors and it helps your child feel they belong to something greater than themselves. But we need to, as families who are migrants, be really open to how Australian culture is slightly different, and certain things like tall poppy syndrome and mateship stood out to me. So yeah, there's beautiful things in this country. We love it.
And sport is one of the massive things in this country. I don't even have a team and I feel like that makes me un-Australian somehow. But how has sport become so synonymous with being Australian?
You just have to look outside our window and look at our geography and our climate. Yes. You know, we have 24/7, 365 days a year, a climate that we can go outdoors and play sport. That is very different to many other cultures and countries. So we are blessed. We are surrounded by water. So we just automatically have water sports. And then the migrants, you know, that Mark's alluded to, have all brought their own sports to Australia. Yeah. And then Aussies are great with their mateship, like Colette has said, and all want to go, you know, and we are a real give it a go type culture to bring all that together.
Yeah, and identity then is a sort of natural after effect of having some kind of sport group to be part of, a church group, a social group of some kind. Mark, how does that connection to some kind of group really influence what we believe about ourselves and understand about our identity?
Yeah, well, often our identity is not just an individual one, but it's a collective one. So we will identify ourselves based on, you know, the company that we work for, or perhaps the group we're part of, where we live, which is not just an individual thing. There's thousands of other people that live in that same suburb or area, and of course our sporting team. And that collectivism, I think, is important. You know, we've often thought of Australia perhaps as individualistic, because a lot of the Western world, it's about the individual. But actually, of recent times, I've seen more and more in our research how we are a collectivist nation, like you see a lot in Asia, for example. You know, people come together. They try to respond to what the authorities might be saying. We saw over the last few years with various health mandates and other things, Australians got together. They tended to do the sensible thing. They tended to respond to what was being told, and we showed ourselves to actually be collectivists rather than anti-authority and individualistic. And that collectivism is helped as we realise our connection with sports or groups or other identities.
Yeah, and for all the different people that live in Australia that make up these different identities, each of us do have an ability to shape what our cultural identity is. Colette, how would you say we do that? If we want to be positive contributors to our national identity, how can we be part of that?
I think the key word there is positive. I think it's looking for what is beautiful and wonderful in this country and celebrating some of that. Of course, there's, you know, issues that happen and, you know, certain decisions that get made that we might not agree with, but there's so many beautiful things that work here. Celebrating those things and then getting out and supporting your local teams and, you know, doing sausage sizzles and fairy bread, and, you know, I'm just throwing out words that are things that for me were these beautiful lights that went on when I came into Australia. It's just discovering some of those things that are so Aussie that makes you feel as though you're part of the Australian community.
Yeah. Raewyn, would you add anything to that, how we can be positive contributors to our cultural identity?
Yeah, I think look at the foundation of what you love, where your heart is. I went to sport because of my children. Other people will go to other things because of their family. Be present, you know, in that space and actually ask the receive and the give. When you talked about earlier about transactional, we will always benefit and receive from it regardless, and it will overwhelm us with just how much our community will love us when we need it.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to say Aussie, 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 you know? You got it, there we go. Thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us as well.
If there's a topic that you'd like to see discussed on Helping Hands, visit our website and be in touch. We love talking about the things that make the world a better place.
There is so much more to unpack in the conversation around our national culture and identity and the things that make us who we are. We would love for you to continue the conversation online. Join us on our social media channels. Go to helpinghands.tv and follow the links to Facebook and Instagram. We would love to pick up the conversation with you right there. Thanks for being part of Helping Hands today, and I hope you can join us again next week. There's no doubt that the stories we tell, watch, listen to and interact with help to change the world around us, and we will be thrilled to have you as part of our story.
Let us know about the Helping Hands in your local community at helpinghands.tv. Send a photo or a short video and tell us about your local heroes in 25 words or less.
Special thanks to Darlinghurst Theatre Company and to Mark McCrindle, Colette Smart and Raywin Elsgood for joining Laura Bennett in the studio today. See you next week here on Helping Hands.